Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 24 of our course on philosophy of climate change. I will, of course, don't worry, get over to the PowerPoint slides. I know you can't live without them, but this time we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to start with a video. I'm recording this the day after the first and only vice presidential debate in the election, and climate change and the Green New Deal came up a lot. Yeah, and I was delighted and horrified, I guess, at the same time. I want to play a little clip here, which actually does a lot to frame our topic for the day on Electrify Everything. So let me see if I can do that with Akbar's help. I think I'll have to toggle down a bit here. Let's see if this works.
The progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. That's enough. Note his comment about the free market, his comment about CO2 emissions declining. That's kind of what I want to focus on. So, Akbar, help me out. What do I want to do? New share. We'll do this. Okay, I hope that y'all are seeing this now. I guess we'll find out soon enough. And, oh, look, I can put myself in the corner. There I am. Oh, there's Akbar. Humanoids, hello. Okay. Electrify everything. We're going to get back to that debate clip in just a moment. Let's build up to it, though. So, help me out, Akbar. Here we go. Okay. Today, look, our goal to examine and assess this idea of wide-scale electrification as a key aspect of climate change policy. Indeed, perhaps, as we see at the end here, maybe this is essentially the technical manual for the Green New Deal. Maybe electrifying everything is going to be the solution to climate change. Not a silver bullet, because it's a whole bunch of things, but it's a way of gathering all of those up. Say, if we could electrify all of our energy sources and demands, we'd be a long ways towards meeting our climate objectives. I'm going to start with a little bit about electricity, recap where we're at, then I'll bring you back to that VP debate, which sets us up to talk about why CO2 emissions are declining, although not fast enough, how we can do it faster, and how we pay for it. So that's it. I want you to kind of, at the end of this, I'm hoping you understand a little bit about electricity and this idea of electrifying everything as maybe a really exciting approach to climate policy. Okay, now in the reading, and again, this lecture is based on the reading I gave you, the Roberts reading on the, I think the title is something like the US can get off of fossil fuels very rapidly. Something like that. It's linked in your notes and it's on the syllabus, of course. This Sankey diagram is in there, and it's a doozy. And actually, there's a nice video embedded in that article that you might want to watch too, because it breaks down the Sankey diagram into three parts. I'm going to give you a simpler version of much the same thing, and this is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. On your left, you've got sources of energy, and on the right, you have the end-use sector. So, for example, the top, you've got petroleum, and on the left side, on the top of the right side, you've got transportation. Then you have arrows showing you where that source of energy is going in terms of the end-use sector. Where is it used? So you can see what percent of that source of energy is used in what sector. There's a lot of information in this diagram. So you can see, I know this is a little bit fuzzy and small, but at the top there, see that top line under petroleum? It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines coming out of it. Oh gosh, Akbar, help me out. I hope you can see my little arrow here. This is 70. So 70% of our petroleum, follow the line, goes to transportation. Makes sense, right? Cars, trucks, airplanes, buses, using up most of our petroleum. Only 1%, look at this, goes down to electricity. What is electricity? Why is it its own little box here? Well, electricity is a secondary energy source. It's not a primary energy source. You get electricity by converting petroleum or natural gas or solar or wind or coal or nuclear into electricity, right? So it's not a primary energy source, it's a secondary energy source. It's really key for this whole idea about electrification as a climate policy. So where does most of our electricity come from? Well, not petroleum. We actually used to burn a lot more oil for electricity than we do now. Um, a lot, an increasing amount from natural gas. We'll get to that in a second. Increasingly from renewables, coal, a lot. So this 90 says 90% of the coal that we burn, we do for electricity, right? And nuclear. All the nuclear we have is for electricity. That makes sense. Then on this other side, you can look, well, what sectors of the economy, what end-use sectors are powered by electricity? You see this line here? I think that says less than 1%. In other words, our transportation sector is not electrified. That's the problem, right? What about our industrial sector? Well, help me out reading. I think it says 12%. Our industrial sector is not very electrified. That's the problem. You can keep doing it. Residential, we could electrify a lot more things like furnaces, for example, in homes. And commercial, you can look at that. So electrifying everything would mean, well, first of all, you get your source of electricity from renewables and from nuclear, right? Carbon-free sources. So you would try to squash out the fossil fuel-based sources, coal, natural gas, petroleum. And then you would try to power everything in terms of our end use of energy on that electricity. And the idea is this actually can be done with more or less current technologies. It just requires a massive buildup and mobilization and deployment and the financing scheme to make it work. But it could be done, right? That's the idea. Okay, sorry to linger on that so long, but I think that's important. In a way, that's the whole idea in a nutshell. Okay, remember where we are, this new SIJ, Standards, Investments, and Justice. And last time I said we're going to focus on this S for standards, that is making things run on renewables. Well, renewables produce electricity. So you want to get more electricity from renewables, and then you want to get more things to run on electricity. Get the green electrons and get everything to be powered by green electrons. That's electrifying everything. And last time we said you set sector-specific standards, especially for this low-hanging fruit. Now the power sector, which just is electricity, can drive fossil fuel emissions way down. Again, if we could turn the power sector entirely green and then get everything run on those green electrons. But hold on to that thought. Let's go back to the debate. Now, what does this have to do with that clip from the debate? I think there's a tie-in here. And I wish, part of the frustrating thing, look, there was so much to unpack. They gave, you know how debates are, they're terrible. A few minutes to talk about this massively complex issue. And I was just like, oh, that's kind of right, but no, there's more to say about that. But anyways, I can't say enough about everything. I'll just pick one thing, and that was Vice President Pence's remark. The United States has reduced CO2 more than countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord. Is that true? Well, yes and no. Stats, right? You can do anything you want with stats. So let's look at those. You have to look, I think, at percent reductions. Now, first, though, look at this. And I've circled here the source of this data. I've told you, I think this statistical review of energy from BP is one of our really good, reliable sources of information. Okay, a good climate sense maker in my terms. This is from the AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, which is a conservative think tank, but a reputable one. A lot of good people there. And this is good data, right? Yes, indeed. Look at this. Wow, USA is blowing away everybody in terms of reductions in CO2 emissions. Okay, but what's going on? So I went to the same data source. So this is in your notes, and this is the BP statistical review of energy. A lot of data here. Let me just highlight some things. Here we are. Oh, look at that. Actually, the US, in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, has decreased over time. In 2019, a 3% decline. The decade 2008 to 18, 1.1%. Not bad, but not as good as this makes it look in comparison to other countries when you look at a percent of the total, which is only fair to do because all countries are not the same size economies, right? When you look at that, you find, oh, there's quite a few countries who are doing way better. Now, it's interesting, Venezuela, I don't know the story there, but that may be because of economic decline. I don't think that's the case in these European countries, though, that are faring better than the US in terms of percentage of total emissions that they've been able to cut over the last year and over the last decade. Now, look at this number. See that big one I just highlighted? 4,964.7 million tons of CO2. There's no other country that comes close to the total emissions of the US. So yeah, we were able to cut, what, 600 million tons or something, and that looks huge compared to other countries. But their economies aren't even 600 million tons in size, right? In fact, I'm going to highlight at the bottom there, you see that the entire EU is far smaller than the US in terms of overall emissions. So take that for what it is. By the way, side note here. Look at this. I didn't highlight anything, but you can see gigajoules per capita. So how much does the average American individual consume? 287 gigajoules per capita, per person. That is larger than anybody else except for Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. I think, and then there's a couple others. What's that in there? Norway, maybe? Anyways, we're towards the very top on that. So just to say, look, there's lots of ways to slice the data, but Vice President Pence was right that CO2 emissions are declining, okay? Now, they're not declining nearly fast enough. I don't know if you remember last time we talked about in order to reach our UNFCCC targets, 2 or 1.5C, you need to talk about an 11% cut annually. So this 1, 2, 3% cuts are great, but not nearly the scale we need. But let's focus on why. Why are those emissions going down? And the answer is electricity, right? It's the power sector. So this is in your notes. But this, by the way, I wanted to put this here, this slide, because look, Inside Climate News, I don't think I've talked about them, but for me, they're one of the important climate sense makers. I think they're a reputable organization because they use, again, the primary data that we know is reputable, and they're trusted by other people in the field. So this is from them. I got this linked in your notes. Look here on the left, US net greenhouse gas emissions by sector. You can see the power sector is the one that's driving our decline in CO2 emissions. Why is the power sector driving declines? Well, declines, look on the right. Coal is dying. Right? Coal is dying primarily because of market forces. That's true. That's another thing Vice President Pence said is the free market economy and innovation. Those were his words, and there's certainly some truth in that, I think. It's a limited truth. I'll get that towards the end here. Okay, now there's a bonus to be had by getting everything run by electrons, is you get massive efficiency gains. Okay, this is in your article from Roberts. So here's the idea is the power sector, which is on the left side there on the top line, see how that's going down? Transportation's not going down, industry's not going down, other buildings not going down. But power is, so if you could get, and power is just electricity, right? If you could get industry and transportation and buildings to run on electricity, and if that electricity continues to be decarbonized in the way it is, well then boom, we're starting to decarbonize the entire economy much more quickly because now all of these sectors of the economy are run on electrons that are increasingly green. That's the idea, right? Now, one concern though, look at one of the reasons coal is dying out is because of the rise of natural gas generated electricity, right? Which is a good thing for CO2 emissions, no doubt about it. And this, by the way, is a story of fracking. But my worry is methane, because natural gas is methane, CH4. And methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. And so we have to be real careful with an economy that's increasingly relying on natural gas, because although CO2 numbers might look better, we may not be tracking all the methane leaks in the system, right? That's probably a whole other talk, but I just want to flag that. Okay, now, big picture. It's all about how fast we can replace machines. Okay, all of the fossil fuel machines, internal combustion engines, the big power generators that run on coal. How fast can we get those replaced with things that run on renewables and nuclear? And then how fast can we make sure all of that green electricity is powering all of these sectors of our economy? Now, back to Vice President Pence saying the free market has done this, and I said that's true, but it's limited. Well, yeah, I mean, according to this analysis, which is in your Roberts reading, the free market acting alone is nowhere near fast enough to get this electrification of everything going. We're not going to reach our climate targets on a free market sort of trajectory. You need these massive mandates, which is to say standards, S for standards. You've got to get a kind of World War II mobilization, they're saying, where people literally drop what they're doing. You create all these millions of jobs, building new clean green machines and then deploying them. Now, how do you pay for it? This is really interesting. You finance it with loans, government loans that are low interest loans. This is my term. I think it's like consumer bonds. I don't know if you know bonds, like when a city needs to build new roads and they can't pay for it right away, they have this bond package that gets passed. It's a really low interest way of taking out a giant loan. Well, the idea with electrifying everything is you want consumers to get an electric car in their garage. You want them to get a furnace that runs on electricity. You want them to get solar panels on their roofs. Give them a loan, a really low interest loan, because all that costs money up front. But they could buy it all up front because they're going to pay it off later. And then you very quickly transition all these machines, these fossil fuel ones out of the economy and these clean green ones into the economy. And then this low interest loan, they can pay off a little bit over time. That's the idea, anyways. Okay, last note, the Green New Deal is the technical manual. I'm sorry, Electrifying Everything is the technical manual for the Green New Deal. Again, this aspirational framework, which of big ideas. How are you going to do it? Well, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to electrify everything, and it really could work, or at least that's the argument we're presenting to you here for you to think about. And it has all these benefits. Jobs, right? 25 million jobs, according to the analysis that's taken up from this Rewiring America group, which David Roberts is interpreting for us in the piece that you read. Cleaner air, get rid of fossil fuel sources of emissions, saving costs, again, largely because electric motors are just so much more efficient than internal combustion engines. And let's face it, the cars are cooler. Everybody's driving around in a Tesla or something like that. And oh, by the way, we can avert the climate catastrophe, or at least avoid maybe some of the worst case scenarios. So that's electrifying everything, different ways to look at it, maybe a hopeful path forward. I don't know. That's for you to think about. Akbar here really liked this quote. This is from the video that's embedded in the Roberts piece that I think is worth watching. It kind of just summarizes the article for you and has really nice graphics. All of recorded human history has happened within an era of relative climate stability, an era that's about to end because, whoop, look at that line that we're now experiencing here as we increase temperature above pre-industrial levels. So that's the big picture, and maybe electrifying everything is a big solution for it. Something to chew on. Next time, geoengineering, which, by the way, remember, this plan doesn't call for any carbon capture and sequestration. But I don't know, maybe we're going to have to do some geoengineering. So let's think about that next time. Until then, may the force be with you.